It was a biting cold evening in a small town where most folks hurried along the streets, heads down, clutching their coats. Elijah, a 14-year-old boy with shoes too worn for the weather and a stomach growling louder than the traffic, held in his hands the first hot meal he'd had in 2 days. It wasn't much, just a paper box of fried chicken and fries from a diner he'd managed to pay for after doing odd jobs. He sat down on the steps of a closed shop, hands trembling with anticipation as the steam rose. That's when he saw them. An elderly couple shuffled past, moving slowly, their faces pale and weary. The man's arm wrapped around his wife's shoulder, not just for affection but for support. Elijah noticed the way they lingered at the diner's door, peeking inside as if trying to smell the food they couldn't afford. The woman pressed her husband's hand and whispered, "Let's keep walking." Elijah's chest tightened. His meal suddenly felt heavier than it should have. He looked down at the box, his one warm chance against the cold, and then back at them. His lips trembled as he called out, "Excuse me, would you like to share this?" The couple turned, surprised. The man started to decline, but his wife's eyes glistened. Elijah didn't wait for an answer. He stood, walked over, and placed the box into the woman's hands. "It's yours," he said softly, "please." For a moment, silence hung in the air, broken only by the rustling of the box. The old woman's tears spilled freely as she whispered, "Bless you, son." Elijah forced a smile, ignoring the emptiness in his stomach, and walked home through the cold night. His home wasn't much, a single room he shared with his aunt, who worked late shifts. He climbed into bed without dinner, hugging his thin blanket. Hunger gnawed at him, but he felt strangely full. The next morning, a heavy knock rattled their front door. Elijah, still half asleep, stumbled to open it. On the porch stood a tall man in a dark coat, polished shoes, and the kind of presence that made the small apartment feel even smaller. "Are you Elijah?" the stranger asked. "Yes, sir," Elijah replied cautiously. The man's expression softened. "My name is Mr. Carter. May I come in?" Moments later, seated at the tiny kitchen table, Mr. Carter explained. The old couple Elijah had fed, they were his parents. He had sent them to live quietly in town after his father's illness, never imagining they'd ever struggle so much, or meet someone like Elijah. "They told me what you did," Mr. Carter said, his voice thick with emotion. "A boy with nothing gave them everything he had." He reached into his coat, pulling out an envelope, and placed it on the table. "You changed more than their night, Elijah. You changed mine. And I'd like to change yours." Elijah's eyes widened as he opened the envelope. Inside was more money than he'd ever seen in his life. His hands shook, and he looked up at Mr. Carter, lost for words. The man leaned closer, his eyes warm but serious. "Kindness like yours doesn't go unnoticed. It finds its way back."